Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is our second webinar in our security and compliance webinar series. Today, we're going to be discussing how we can help you navigate today's security and compliance challenges through a few expert perspectives that joined us. They're going to be taking a look at how organizations are thinking about security today, balancing accessibility, security and dynamic environments, strategies, stories, lessons learned, really anything that can help you in your compliance efforts. Real quick, our third and final webinar is coming up on November 9th. We're going to be taking a deep dive under the hood, look a little bit closer at portfolio security, compliance, encryption solutions. We're going to ensure that your most important information is protected. So make sure you register now. Okay, so enough with me. Joining our panel today, I'd like to extend a very warm Shamrock welcome to Ryan Larson. He is an enterprise application administrator at the University of Minnesota. Victor Mendoza, he's principal solutions engineer at Thales. And Rob Albright, CEO and founder of Shamrock Solutions. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So in our first webinar in our series, we explored some of the evolving security breaches. Victor, you and I talked about that we've seen over the recent years, discussed a few of the best practices for building a strong and secure foundation. So Victor, for example, thinking forward a bit and given your experience in the industry, how do you see digital threats evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. And actually, that's a great question. If you look at the digital threat landscape, it is constantly changing, it's constantly evolving, and the cyber criminals are really getting more sophisticated with their attacks. One example, where things are kind of evolving is probably with ransomware. In the beginning with ransomware, it's mostly focused on attacking the availability of data by denying users access to their data by using encryption, which I think was kind of interesting back in the day, because back in the day, encryption was mostly used as the defense technology to kind of control access to the information. Now today, encryption still plays a big role in ransomware, but it has evolved a little bit more, where instead of just attacking the availability, it's also attacking the confidentiality of the information by first attempting to exfiltrate the data and then attacking the availability. And so this way, it kind of gives cyber criminals a little bit more advantage in trying to force either the user or the company into making that ransomware payment. Otherwise, right, they're either going to publish, leak, and disclose some of the critical and sensitive information, which might be a little bit more difficult to recover from. And so, as long as cyber criminals have a way to monetize their efforts, we'll continue to see a rise in ransomware attacks, right? And so that's just one example. Two other evolving threats that I kind of keep an eye on is around AI. And quantum computers. So with AI, we kind of see someone kind of develop a very sophisticated email and kind of using that to kind of trick someone to clicking a link or even downloading some sort of malicious software, right? We even seen some malicious actors use AI to try to develop some sort of exploits or even find vulnerabilities within the code. But more concerning that I'm finding is how they're using it to kind of create deep fakes, right? With both video and audio, and that technology is just kind of getting better over time. And so, with AI, the way I think of it is that I see it attacking an operating system that really has no patch available, which is kind of like the human OS. But then you also have quantum computers, which is also evolving and also becoming more powerful. And then one day, we'll probably have a nation that's able to develop, cluster, and maybe build one of these super massive quantum computers that will probably be powerful enough to kind of maybe attack and break some of our modern public cryptography, which is what our digital trust is kind of built upon. And so, there's a lot of threats out there. There's just really an infinite number of threats at sea. But we also need to remember that not all threats are relevant to our company or institutions, right? And so at some point, I think we need to shift the conversation from threats to risk and start asking some very basic questions as far as, what is the risk we're really trying to reduce? And also, what is kind of a risk posture? Because the reality is that, we're not really going to address every single risk, right? We're not going to have 100% security. So we need to understand what's going to be your risk posture. So yes, there's a lot of evolving threats out there, but I think we need to shift the conversation to talk about risk as well.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. So Ryan, how do you guys in the higher ed space kind of stay updated and address, all these emerging threats? Because as a major university, you guys got a big target on your back. So how do you address these threats?
Yeah, we do. It's a great challenge. The university we're a public entity, and as such, we have a lot of different end users, and both internal and external. We have students that are looking to come. We have students that are here. We have students that have graduated. You know, we have HR, police, research. So we have so many different interactions with people, internal and external, that on any given day we have several million connections hitting our systems daily. That's on a daily basis. So we need to hit compliance from PHI, HIPAA, FERPA, GLBA, you know, just to name a few different things of stuff, you know, highly technical there, but stuff hitting our systems. And in order to hit those different kinds of things, you know, just that's from the high level. You know, internally, my team, you know, recently we had to do GLBA, just to kind of narrow it down a little bit, as you're kind of saying, how do we look at those kinds of things? So just taking it down to a smaller level, you know, we have to start looking at things like code reviews, taking a look, how are you actually hitting those data points? How are you using the data? Who's using the data? How are you meeting the needs of your people, the people that are using the data? Are you meeting the compliance for the, sorry, the compliance needs? Is compliance being met? So you got to look at it from both aspects. Is the data accessible from the people needing to consume it? And are you keeping it safe? So is the compliance side being met? And that's a hard thing where those two intersect, because compliance can make stuff really challenging, and it can make it hard to use the data, because making it where it can be really hard to access. And compliance likes to do that, where you know, your users, you want to make it where it's really easy to get to, because they need to get to it fast. They need to they want to be able to see the stuff, so that their day-to-day activities are not hard to do things. But yet compliance says, oh, no, wait a minute. We need to put 16 different versions of how making sure who you are. You know, I'm making it overly hard here, but you know, there's lots of things that go on to making sure who a person is, for example. So, you know, you got to go through all those different steps, right, to make sure that stuff is secure. All your data points are secure. So going through your compliance steps every year is super important, and going through that GLBA compliance, or your FERPA compliance, your HIPAA compliance, going through all those compliance steps every year as a small team or as a bigger team, depending on, you know, what groups you're involved with, are really big steps as a small team or as a bigger team. But then to step it back out, taking a look at those emerging threats, or as a bigger team, you know, our UIS team, which is kind of the team at the upper level again, they participate in different ISACs, or information sharing analysis centers, where they're able to share data between different higher ed centers or higher ed groups, where they're able to share and receive details about different attacks going on. They're able to share where they found weak points, maybe, or be able to share where they did find stuff, you know, the stuff that doesn't hit the big media airwaves. They don't want to let people know that there was an attack that was successful, because they don't want to let the bad guys, for lack of a better word, know that there was a success, because now that once that gets out, they know that they can you know, hit other people. There's also other cybersecurity information feeds that pertain directly to higher education institutions that our UIS folks do really listen to. So they really monitor those feeds. They're really looking for those different avenues that other groups are watching and what they're hearing. But then on top of that, our institution gives us access to vulnerability management platforms. So they empower us as smaller groups to monitor our own platforms and our own tools. So as those vulnerability management platforms monitor our tools, we're able to see, are there any weak points and anything else that's been identified, so that we can then take steps to correct and manage and monitor and take any actions to rectify those solutions as well. So we're constantly in communication. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna.
I think that's the biggest piece.
No, I think that's absolutely, it's the key. And you know, and you had mentioned GLBA, and Rob, you know, I know that you had recently worked with Thales, you know, with another university, you know, about GLBA, and you know, without revealing any specifics, but you know, can you share kind of some of the insights on how Shamrock approaches and addresses challenges like this, you know, when working with the university, you know, that like Ryan had mentioned?
Yeah, so we obviously have multiple layers of software, multiple softwares involved at Shamrock that we not only support but implement and expand out on. So, to some of our, I would say a large majority of our customers are not aware of some of the different security that is I would say a huge vulnerability for them, which is why we partnered with Thales, which is the at-rest data encryption for some of our applications. So I would say probably 95% of our user base today have a vulnerability of not putting their documents putting that into an encryption profile that is at rest. So we have security going in between the threads of the connections, but when it's sitting there, it's as easy as changing the back end of a file name, and you have full access to that document. So I'd say that that's definitely one major vulnerability that some of our customers will see today. The other thing is just the security protocols within getting access to the system, and kind of what Ryan was going in with that multi-factor authentication. That's not going to get any easier trying to figure out who's accessing your system, because there's a lot of I guess, in addition to the at-rest data encryption, the encryption methods going forward, but there's a lot of internal theft going on as well. Making sure that the person that has access to those documents maybe has a cell phone that can take a picture of the screen to go pull off that information, which you have zero control over. So if there's someone in there accessing those documents that shouldn't be, that doesn't have the right authentication, then there's definitely risk there as well. So making sure that not only you're doing everything from a back end encryption level, but also from a front end, and making sure that the users that have access to the right documents aren't you don't have an AP user that has access to the HR documents that are sitting there going in and taking screenshots or pictures from their cell phones to those documents. So making sure you're locking down the security on that side too is extremely important.
No, that's huge. Yeah. Granting access as little and as much as necessary, right? No more than you need, and no less than what you absolutely need, and having that be fully auditable. And so Victor, can you talk a little bit about how that accessibility, how that's evolving? Maybe even especially post-COVID, right? The increased adoption of remote work and digital solutions. How is that digital accessibility evolving?
Great question. There's been this whole balance between security and accessibility, and we've had this problem with identity access management, dealing with passwords for a very long time, and we try to improve that security of passwords by making sure they use a mixture of uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, special characters, right? We even try to make where passwords are a certain length, right? They're not too short, not too long, just the right amount. And we even have passwords managers, right, which kind of helps, but they also become a major target for a lot of cyber criminals. And again, right, I think it was Robert that I kind of mentioned MFA, right? MFA is a great way to kind of reduce the risk, but not everyone's using MFA. There's this new technology that I came across just a few weeks ago that people are calling passkeys, which are kind of like this FIDO standard that are based on public key cryptography. So you have public keys and private keys, and these are generated and stored on a device that's either bound to a device, or they can be shared, backed up, and accessed across different devices. Right. And this is a way so we can actually, as an industry, start moving away from passwords, start using something more secure, and not making it too difficult for our users to try to access whatever information they need to. Right. And so right now it's still kind of new. I think only some of the major players are starting to introduce this new passkey feature, such as, I think Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. I think GitHub has also introduced it. So hopefully over the next couple of years, we start to see a lot more, what do you call it? Embrace it, I guess. Trying to embrace passkeys a little bit more.
Adoption.
To kind of, adoption. Yeah. There you go. That's what I'm looking for.
And I think that's great. And Ryan, I was going to ask you, so we talk about these new technologies and everything, and how do you stay on top of that? And as Ryan, you oversee your enterprise applications at University of Minnesota. I'm sure you're thinking about this, but do you have particular strategies, that you see as being, useful to make sure that your user base and, they're using the latest and greatest, and that their data is safe and secure?
Well, we always try to do our best, of course, but the wheels at a big institution turn slow. So when COVID hit, just for example, we got hit pretty hard and pretty fast. Everything moved digitally. So we, MFA and SAML were really at the forefront of everything because we had to, everything moved that direction. Everything protected us there. Multi-factor authentication, it wasn't quite ready for accessibility. But our MFA provider really worked with us, and they made some great strides moving towards that accessibility, working with screen readers and things like that. But as we know that a lot of the screen reader technology also is what a lot of your, I guess, bad actors work with too. So it kind of exposes stuff that shouldn't be exposed. So there's definitely a balance piece there that has to be dealt with. But along with that, we do work with a lot of our vendors to go towards that accessibility and work with the security on, what do their roadmaps look like? We're heavily vested on road mapping and talking to those vendors and seeing what do their plans look like. And if those plans don't include accessibility, if they don't include the security standards, we start looking at other places. It's really that simple. If they are not on board, then neither are we. There's plenty of other people out there that are coding for it and doing the work for the accessible. As you mentioned at the beginning, we have big targets on our back for everything, and accessibility is one of them. Accessibility we take very seriously, as we have a very large student body with about 75,000 students. And a lot of them have accessibility needs, and that includes staff too, or faculty. So we need to make sure that all of our systems are accessible and secure. So that's a high priority for us.
Yeah, that's good. So, like Rob and Victor, when you guys are engaging with customers and organizations like University of Minnesota, like how do you go about gathering the information you need or their feedback to make sure when you're helping on their digital transformation journey, that they're thinking about all these things?
Victor, you may go first.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think I'm not an expert on security. I'll be the first to admit that. And I can't be an expert on everything either. So there's so much in the industry that changes so quickly that it is hard to keep up with. And that's why I think it's important to partner with people that this is their 100% main concern is security. So again, like I said before, that's why we partner with Thales for this, because I cannot sit there and be the main source of correcting everything security related for every application we have. So I think from a Shamrock standpoint, we make sure that we do the needful, which we get our compliances, our SOC 2 compliance. We go through all the necessary steps when we're doing code, when we're developing code. So we have all of our penetration testing. We use third party for that as well. We use Veracode for our penetration testing. We have Vanta to make sure we're all up to date on all of our compliance and making sure that we have all of our certifications done. So we rely heavily on outsourcing a lot of that internally to make sure that we stay up to date on threats and that our applications are 100% security forward, and where a lot of our competition is not certified or compliant with a lot of these additional exercises that we have to go through. There's not a lot of people taking that. Not only is it time consuming, but it's also cost involved there as well to get the additional certifications. So we take it very seriously at Shamrock, and but we outsource a lot of that to make sure that it's done properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's key, especially anybody who's watching this that's not a security expert and you're thinking about your project for process automation or anything, really making sure that you're considering security, right? When you go speak with your CIO, about a project or a need that you had, security is going to be the front of their mind on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Hey, so finally, as we take to a look at some of the real world strategies and successes or lessons learned, I wanted to highlight that security and compliance really is an ongoing process, right? That I think that's been a key takeaway, and that every organization has its triumphs and trials, and we're just hoping to give you some stepping stones for your path through digital transformation. So Rob, Victor, from Shamrock and Thales' perspective, have you observed kind of any prevalent themes or patterns emerging from our customer base regarding their security journeys and things that they should really paying attention to?
I can maybe start with this one. So, Rob, you kind of mentioned, right? Not everybody's an expert in everything. There's a big challenge around cost, right? Security is getting more expensive. It's getting more complex. There's, sometimes resistance within internal organizations with trying to with change, and even if someone writes us a check and we deploy all this technology, there's still the lack of expertise, right? And so one of the problems is not so much technology that I've noticed with our customers, but really with having the right mindset and having the right people that understand the technology and able to leverage that correctly. And so a lot of things that we kind of do with our customers, trying to focus on things they can control, right? We talked about some of the threats, we talk about vulnerabilities. We can't really control those, right? But what you can control is your assets. So you can control your identity, you can control your data. So those are two key areas that we try to focus on and help our customers try to put strategy around that, right? And actually making sure that we shift the conversation from threat to risk, right? Kind of understand what is the risk posture, kind of put a plan together, make sure we communicate, and make sure the employees understand, the importance, of cybersecurity within not just the company, but the institute as well. So.
Oh, that's really good. And Ryan, previously you had talked about some resources out there from staying up to date on emerging security trends or threats. And could you highlight those again, kind of more specifically, where you would recommend people, go educate themselves and monitor for the latest information?
Nothing specifically. I was talking. I was talking. So a lot of what I do is I work with our internal UIS department, which is our security department, and they are the folks that I rely on. As Robert said, I am not a security professional. I rely heavily on our internal folks that are the professionals that know all the things, or at least try to know all the things. They are the ones that have their ear to the ground and are listening and looking for the next biggest, worst, best, whatever, whatever adjective you'd like to throw at the beast, and are trying to alert people to what's going on. You can always sign up for Microsoft CVs and looking for looking out there for the security channels. There are groups out there that do things. Yeah, I don't know of anything specifically, unfortunately, to throw out there for folks to listen to.
Engage with the experts, and
yeah, and I feel like Victor's talking to me right now through the voice of the way I talk to my kids. Is if you ask one of my kids what's the most important thing in your day, they will tell you it's control what you could control. And that if you can't control it, you probably we got bigger problems. But controlling what you can control. Some of our customers, we've discussed at-rest data encryption. I think another big one that our customers utilize that we have not discussed is especially when you're talking about internal theft, is being able to redact the PII information. Being that Shamrock's a content management company, we deal with a bunch of documents. Having PII information on those documents that's available on the screen, that's something you can control. And we do a lot of projects for our customers that auto redact that PII information so that when it comes across an SSN or something that in a healthcare that may be an identifiable piece of information, we can get to the level and auto redact that as well. So those are different scenarios that you do have control over. And we have one customer that it was a banking client that every time they found a credit card number on a document, they got fined $10,000. So that adds up pretty quick. But that is something that we were brought in to alleviate their risk there.
That's a great, yeah, the understanding kind of what PII you have floating around, your content systems, your email spreadsheets, that are sitting. I mean, that's another reason to get rid of all that loose paper, all the managing processes with email and spreadsheets and things like that, because you really have so little control over that, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't know who's looking at it, what they're able to do to it, and the content that's in there. So yeah, you control what you can control, and make sure you have the right tools in there to do it well.
Yeah,
Well, hey
and
guys,
Great
this
point,
is great.
Robert, bringing up the whole data privacy aspect as well, right? Because sometimes we talk about just data security, and even when we talk about data security, a lot of people kind of think about encryption or access, right? But we also need to think about the integrity, right? The accuracy of the data and also the availability. So, but also the privacy, kind of like you mentioned, Robert. So, thanks for bringing that up.
no problem.
That's great. Well, hey guys, this is kind of bringing us to the end of our webinar, and I just want to give you a huge thank you. Rob, Victor, Ryan, thanks for sharing your insights and your experiences. I want to give another plug for our final webinar again in the series, our deep dive under the hood peek at security and compliance solutions. That's going to be November 9th. Please, RSVP today. Thanks for viewing our webinar, and take a look at our website for any other previous or past or upcoming events and webinars. Just really appreciate everybody's time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for joining us, guys.
Have a good one.